Hello and welcome. Today I'm adding Guntner from the Mega Cat Collection 3 to my ever-growing list where I rank every Evercade game ever. Guntner is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up or a horizontally scrolling shoot-'em-up developed for the NES and certainly has echoes of Jeff Minter's work, although it clearly is not a Llamasoft game. There is a story about trying to save some alien's pet dingle, and you essentially have to complete the game without taking too long to save the dingle or to deliver it on time or something. Anyway, I might as well just get into the meat of this and start with the
graphics.
And at first glance, for an NES game, it doesn't look like much. Lots of small sprites, a fairly minimalist look, and like I mentioned earlier, it's very Minter-esque. It looks a bit like Defender by way of Jeff Minter, with some quite surrealist looking enemies, lots of things moving around, and it all moves at a pretty brisk pace. It certainly has a style to it, and it's not the most visually appealing NES game, but it works. Interestingly, you can even change the colour scheme a little bit. The overall feel the visuals give is of tripping balls, and that's fine, it works.
Sound and music.
The sound effects are quite early arcade style, with your zappy laser sounds, explosions and a few other bits. There's also the occasional wacky sound effects which, straight out of a Minter game I suppose. The music doesn't really stand out, but it suits the pace of the game, and it also sounds suitably off-kilter. Nothing particularly memorable, but it works for the game.
Gameplay.
A few things stand out on this game immediately. One, it's quite fast and smooth for a shoot-'em-up on the NES, particularly for a homebrew or an indie game, whatever you want to call it. The other is it scrolls right to left. And third, the screen wraps around, so if you go off one side of the screen you'll appear back on the other, which is unusual for a scrolling game. And that's not left to right only, it's up and down as well. You have two main weapons, your basic laser and another laser which does a scatter shot. However, firing that will deplete your energy and can result in you dying. There are star-like enemies which will leave behind power-ups, so it might be an energy top-up or a skull that will orbit your ship and damage enemies, or a limited time version of the scatter shot which won't deplete your health, and I'm sure there's some others. There's a mushroom which makes it even more like tripping balls. The enemy movements are fast and frantic. At times the screen will absolutely be filled with enemies. There's a number of bosses, and the overall feel of the game is very chaotic. But as I mentioned, you have a health bar, it's not a one-hit death kind of scenario. Extra lives are also plentiful, and you may well need them. Death can come quickly despite the health bar. It's not an overly long game, with a complete playthrough taking maybe 15 minutes, but there are multiple endings and the fast frantic action could keep you coming back for more.
Overall opinion.
To be perfectly honest, my first impression of Guntner was pretty negative. Yes, it seemed weird, but it felt like a pretty poor attempt at a shoot-'em-up, and it just felt quite tedious to play, with nothing except for the sort of Minter-esque vibe adding any excitement to it, and that wasn't enough to carry it. But as I got a bit further into it and started understanding what was going on with the game, how the energy worked, the power-ups, even the wraparound, I did find myself actually quite enjoying it. Then I played through it again, and a third time, and in the end I would say I like the game. I can't say I love it, but it's an easy pick up and play, have a little bit of a blast, and it's a little bit odd and that adds a bit of flavour. In fact, I'd say it's a fairly unique shoot-'em-up on the Evercade, so that counts for something, I guess.
Ranking.
So to place it on my overall ranking list where I rank every Evercade game ever, I've decided to put it above Demon Attack but below Void Runner, placing it at 242 out of 411 games that I've ranked so far. And that might seem low for a game that I quite like, but it is rather short and it's not one I can see myself coming back to all that often. Anyway, that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.